welcome back to the stage, Greg Mitchell.
This is too much fun. I keep coming back. All right. So now I have the honor of introducing a government panel discussion. And first, we're going to start with Jan Figel. Jan served as the European Union Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion or Belief outside the EU. He was also a Slovak Minister of Transports. And for the last year, he's been serving on the Global Leadership Council that has been established by the IRF Secretariat as to provide leadership services to the entire global movement. So, Jan Figel. And next up, we have Tristan Azbej. He's the State Secretary for the Aid of Persecuted Christians and the Hungary Helps Program in Hungary. He's also the Vice President of the Christian Democratic the Christian Democratic People's Party in Hungary. And I just wanted to note he has spoken at the IRF Roundtable in Washington, and he's been very supportive of establishing a Religious Freedom Roundtable in Hungary. So please help me welcome Tristan Azbej. All right, thank you, gentlemen. So far this morning, we've heard about the civil society engagement models or frameworks that advance religious freedom. Now it's great to have you two gentlemen coming from the government perspective to talk about governments that advance religious freedom and how important it is. And I just wanted to, so I'll throw it over to Jan first for his opening remarks, and then we'll go to Secretary Azbej. Jan.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg, for your commitment, for your nice words, and I'm glad that as Central Europeans, we are together with Tristan here. It was not easy to get here, but we made it. Look, what easy comes, easy goes, and the situation around religious freedom is very exemplary for encouragement or commitment or continuity. Because more than 20 years ago, this country established its, through ACT, its system or ambassador and commission. And it's a very good example. It works. Of course, it's not perfect as everything, but I'm glad that the United States play this pivotal or leading role. In Europe, development is a bit different, but it's now quite visible. Again, nothing is perfect, but time ago, in 2013, 28 countries adopted guidelines, common guidelines, rules for diplomacy in foreign policy, how to promote freedom of religion or belief. Then in 2016, in time of genocide in Iraq and in Syria, I became the first ever EU Special Envoy. And this was kind of a breakthrough because many people didn't expect it, many people didn't understand it, some opposed, but it's there. There is even continuity now, and I am glad. I am glad. It's not end of story, but important change. And it was followed by many committed governments. Maybe first in the time order was Hungary, United Kingdom, Netherlands, Germany, Denmark, Estonia, Poland, Czech Republic. They established their envoys, ambassadors, plenipotentiaries for this agenda. So this is something unprecedented, but a qualitative, even one can say quantitative change in this area. In recent years, you all may recall very well, there were successful ministerials in this city and then in Warsaw on advancing religious freedom. And also in 2020, in this city established an alliance, International Religious Freedom and Belief Alliance. So this is uncomparable with situation 10 or 20 years ago. It's not, again, finality, but it's a precondition for broader, more influential, more successful movement for religious freedom for all. And I hope that also this summit is something very new, and civil society-led can contribute. I see the answer not so much about specific roles, but beside role which is different for government, different for parliament, different for civil society and faith-based organizations, invitation for convergence, cohesion, cooperation. If we share the objective, if we share knowledge, information, commitment, I think we can make a difference. And this summit can be a breakthrough to create something what could be not only lasting but efficient for improvements in overall international religious freedom. So maybe this was rather a description. Maybe we can speak later on how to translate these good intentions into actions. But I am glad that we can now speak about the realities which were not existing 5 or 10 years ago.
Thank you, Secretary.
Well, it is a pleasure to be here. I'm coming from Hungary, the land of the freedom fighters, and I arrived to the US, the land of the free. And it's great to be here with all these leaders coming from all around the world who love freedom and to understand that there is no human dignity without freedom, and there is no freedom without human dignity. And I think that many of you would agree that we need to protect basic human rights to ensure that there is freedom and human dignity protected. But if we look at the different first-generation human rights, perhaps freedom of religion and belief that is the most violated in the world, and also which is the least protected or discussed upon in the international fora. And this is why this meeting is very important. I participated at the ministerial events before in Washington. I'm very glad, and I deeply appreciate the organizers to keep on this movement of well, basically a wonderful group of international champions fighting for freedom of religion and belief. Hungary had a very tragic, in many parts, tragic history. This is how we became the land of the freedom fighters. And this is why, even though about 3 decades ago Hungary was on the receiving end of international aid, we felt it is our moral obligation to step on the field of international players and donors. So we have started our international aid program called Hungary Helps about 4 or 5 years ago. That's about when we reached that level of development that we could provide more to the communities suffering all around the world. And we decided to specialize. We decided to specialize, because we are a small country with limited resources, on protecting persecuted Christians. And during this discussion, if that's what I'm asked about, I would like to explain why do we support persecuted Christians, how do we support persecuted Christians, and after that, why did we decide to support all other faith groups living alongside with persecuted Christians? What is our unique approach to humanitarian assistance to these groups, and what are the results? And I would like to also offer you a call for partnership in these assistance programs. So we started to focus in persecuted Christians simply because they are the most persecuted religious group in the world. And I want to just clarify before I receive criticism for this statement that suffering is not a competition. We do care about the human dignity and freedom of all different faith groups. Yet, when you create and design policy, you have to follow the facts. And by the facts that stating that Christianity is the most persecuted religion in the world, it's not a sweeping statement. It's not something emotional based. It's a rational thing based on surveys and numbers. By the numbers, Christians are the biggest faith groups who are persecuted in the biggest numbers all around the world. According to several independent surveys, about 340 million people suffer discrimination, terrorist threats, or even straight-out genocidal attacks in the world because of their faith in Christ. And we believe that all people should be protected, meaning that if there are 340 million people persecuted for their faith, the Christian faith in the world, this topic should be discussed in the international organizations. Because up until very recently, it had been a concealed human rights crisis. So it's not on the expense of other discriminated faith groups, but we should elevate it to the level. If we believe in impartiality, in equal value of the people's human dignity, then we should also discuss Christian persecution. And since we are not a big political or diplomatic power, we cannot impose on sanctions on other countries, or we cannot give incentives, we decided to try to save lives through humanitarian assistance. So this is our approach to protecting religious freedom, that we are supporting those communities with humanitarian aid, with so-called rehabilitation aid, who are suffering humanitarian need because of religious intolerance. This is how we have started, and after a while, learning from our Christian counterparts, we extended our support to all the communities living alongside with the Christian communities. First of all, supporting only persecuted Christians, that would not be Christian-like at all. Second, it would be counterproductive because it would increase the stigma on these communities. So by now, after 4 years, we are a proud supporter of persecuted Muslim communities, the Rohingya communities, of persecuted Yazidi communities, and I'm proud to announce at this fora, at this summit, that 2 weeks ago we have started to work together and work for the persecuted Sephardi Jewish community in Yemen.
Great.
Our approach to direct to humanitarian assistance with these communities is to heavily rely on faith-based organizations. We provide support, financial, humanitarian aid straight from the Hungarian people to the religious institutions and to the faith-based communities. We have chosen to use this direct approach instead of somehow dissolving our efforts in the peaciness of not involving these faith-based organizations. And our results are promising. In the course of 4 years, we have reached 250,000 of people who are suffering religious discriminations in more than 40 countries.
Great. Thank you. We have about two to 3 minutes left, so we have time for one question. I'm going to kind of merge the 2 questions into one. How important, so this is a rapid, quick answer, how important is respect and responsibility in advancing international religious freedom? And I'm talking about mutual respect between, not only between the faith communities, but between civil society and governments, mutual respect of all people and the rights of all people, and then social responsibility, which is the path that Hungary has taken. How important are both of those elements in advancing international religious freedom?
I think it's about ethics of responsibility, because respect is invitation to understand the other, or to seek the common ground, common future, or common victory in terms of commonalities. And in dialogue and cooperation, we are stronger, not only in small, but in global dimension. That's why I mentioned in my introductory remarks that we need something, a forum, a platform where governmental and non-governmental forces, including faith-based organizations, can meet together, openly, fairly discuss, but also act towards different, better, more humane future. And I think that this summit is a good beginning. It should continue in a way. It cannot be just Western made and Western located. It must be thought for future to be really global action, inviting all potential like-minded partners, and I'm sure it will bring a lot of good fruits.
Thank you, Secretary.
Well, the good thing is that Jan, for Jan and myself, this is not our first discussion. I can quote him anytime, and I think it could go both ways. And I remember him saying that 3/4 of the world's population lives in a country where at least one faith group's basic human rights are violated, which means that we are facing one of the biggest human rights crises of our time. And my point is that we need to bring in the governments and we need to bring in the international organizations, because all of you are doing wonderful work, the advocacy groups, the NGOs, the churches, but we are talking about a billion people here. This is something that should be on the agenda of the United Nations, of the European Union, of the Human Rights Council all the time. We need to bring in the governments. I'm very proud that the Hungarian government served as an example. I'm very proud that we could partner up with the US government, and together with USAID we are supporting persecuted Christians and Yazidi in Iraq, and we are very proud members of the International Religious Freedom or Belief Alliance, and we took up on a leading role to create the humanitarian task force of this alliance, and I'm very proud to have more than 12 governments joining this task force. And I want to tell all the participants of this summit that we as a government are very much open to any sort of partnership with churches, NGOs, faith-based organizations, because we know that you are the closest ones to the most vulnerable groups, so we should rely on our partnership with you.
Great. Please join me in thanking our guests.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you.